A Light in the Darkness Chapter 28, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. The all-consuming deluge of young attribute flames swallowed the small Orc Space Hulk-style ship consisting of a hollowed-out meteor as the core of its structure, but there were a large number of various-sized ships attached to the Orc vessel that, as a whole, the Orc ship greatly exceeded the size of my own ship. That should have scoured the Greenskins off that filthy abomination, Elesmere whispered happily to me as after the young energy-enhanced flames died out the exterior of the meteor was visibly smaller with a great deal of its mass being burnt away with the odd ships and such that they attached to the Space Hulk structure having been burnt away to the point of nothingness or simply their remains floating in space as our ships left them behind to the cold vacuum of space. Yes, but as you can see, Orcs will forever be undaunted. I said wryly, as of all things to come streaming out of the massive meteor, Orcs with massive rockets strapped to their back to launching themselves at my ship was not in my mind. Should we just let the Orcs miss our ship? I asked, feeling kind of bad for anyone to be left behind in the vacuum of space. Better death than such a thing, honestly. Sure, or just continue to kill them with the ship's weapons. Actually, why don't you use the gravity round you have stored up? Destroying a Space Hulk carrying a few tens of thousands Orcs is worthy of it, isn't it? She questioned conversationally. However, I shook my head as refueling the ship's arrays to create the hypercondensed tiny gravity singularity would take me a solid week, and should we be attacked by a great number of ships, and we couldn't just escape for whatever reason, then we would be boned. No, just slow cooking them will be far more efficient for our energy stores, I spoke, and I could feel Elesmere's shrug as she settled in against me with her chin resting on my shoulder as she watched through the monitors the rays of orange light being shot from my young attribute solar cannons, raking over the Space Hulk and slowly destroying it. Meanwhile, the few Orcs who did manage to touch my ship learned all too quick that, as a cultivator ship was made to survive combat against demigods in essence. My ship had a potent force field, so they simply skated off the smooth exterior of my ship's force field to be left behind in the void, as they couldn't get a handhold on an invisible barrier. We get nothing from exterminating these wretches. Let's just leave. I said, seeing the quick battle had already drained more than a quarter of the ship's spiritual energy, and I knew that with having shattered the Space Hulk into pieces, that they were no longer really a threat, nor were they a threat to begin with. As with their fleet only being one massive target, seemingly without a decent warboss to guide their whack. Very well. But after seeing those solar lances, I am very interested in seeing your take on a gravity weapon, as for all I know, only the Necronter extensively use gravity-based weaponry in larger-scale combat. Elesmere all but pouted at not seeing my own superweapon, that I said could, at its current power, if left alone, could atomize a decent-sized asteroid when the gravity singularity destabilizes and rips apart space and time when it goes off, and the sheer force of the explosion of such forces would render anything in its radius to naught but quarks. Yes, my dear. My scary elderly wants to watch a lesser foe be wiped off the face of the galaxy. Tell you what, if we can manage to save up a couple rounds stored up, let's test it on a Tyranid hive ship, and then we could use a bigger version of my biomass converter to make some super nutrient cubes. Elesmere's face, hearing my words, went from ecstatic at the thought of seeing, honestly, one of the galaxy's greatest threats all but annihilated, was warped into despair at the thought of eating an even more flavorful version of the nutrient cubes of ultra-compressed biomass that would fuel our body's physical evolution. Jake, please have mercy. She begged, and as I set the ship back onto course for the star system sector, we were going to look for habitable planets. I simply stood back up once done and patted my depressed elf on her blonde head. Don't worry, Elesmere, at least the flesh of Tyranids won't be tainted by the filth of the hive city. If anything, it should be far more filling and useful than the monsters we ate previously. I tried to cheer her up. But she only responded dryly as she followed me back into our shared room. And the fact that Tyranids' flesh are highly toxic. Bah! Eating such things in a controlled environment will only make your stomach stronger, I said cheerfully, laughing at the thought of mere Tyranid flesh hurting my stomach. I mean, I literally ate a fucking chunk of a sun. A bit of acidic flesh is nothing, and neither would it do anything to her. Elesmere, you literally have a tiny moon inside of you. Just use the yin attribute energies within you to freeze the poisons that survive the nutrient cube creation process and store it away beside your lunar core to spit out in a poison mist. I said, and then went on to teach her a technique that did just that. The technique did literally nothing for me as my yang attributed body burnt away all substances, whether it was helpful or harmful, to fuel the solar energies within, but she, on the other hand, had an all-stilling yin energy within her that could safely isolate such dangerous forces for her to adapt to over time and use as a weapon at her discretion. Why the hell does your weird magic nonsense need us to eat terrible things? Elesmere groaned as she buried her face into my pillow in consternation of how useful such a technique was, so she couldn't stick her nose up at it.